Hey guys, some gamer dude here. When I saw one of Kohdok's 7 Deadly Sins of trading card games was life decks, I knew exactly what angle he'd be going for, and I knew I'd be making a response video standing up for them by rebutting some of his arguments. This video is not meant as an attack or anything of the sort, just addressing Kohdok's arguments. I want to start with Bakugan because that was the angle he came from, and I feel the need to point this out. Bakugan is poorly designed. It's a fun game, but that doesn't make it well made. Flip cards may be inspired by Duel Master's shield triggers, a lot of the game is inspired by Duel Masters, but in a life deck situation, flip cards are derivative of WWE Raw Deal's reversal cards, and by comparing the two, you can see where the flaws lie. In WWE Raw Deal, the cards have a threshold you must meet called Fortitude. After a maneuver, what this game calls attacks, deals damage, it moves to a zone called the Ring. The damage value of all the cards in your ring are your total fortitude. All cards need this fortitude, even reversals. This game's blocks. Reversals are also your damage trigger cards. If your opponent discards a reversal of the same type as your maneuver and they meet its fortitude, the damage is stopped and so is your turn. For an example, say you attacked with a strike. If your opponent discarded a strike reversal and meets the fortitude, the damage is stopped and so is your turn. Simple and clean. Dragon Ball Z would employ a similar mechanic in Endurance to prevent damage. If a card with Endurance is discarded as damage, you can remove it from the game to prevent damage equal to its Endurance value. I'll be very open with my opinion. I much rather shield trigger type effects here to damage prevention. I see damage prevention in this manner as a band-aid for the game's attacks doing too much damage. This is framed by my experience with Dragon Ball Z. Raw Deal incorporates it into the core rule set, and I am a lot more lenient of it there. Raw Deal's cards are designed with it in mind. However, this doesn't negate the fact that no one, anywhere, ever, has made the stupid design decisions of flip cards. Bakugan uses a dumbed-down version of Duel Master's Mana Zone, which in turn means it's derivative of Magic. You tap specific cards to produce resources to pay for other cards, including flip cards. After you attempt to win a battle, you have to pay for the flip cards, which just isn't reasonable or even gel with the game. Resources are being pulled in too many directions. This is why people gravitate towards cards that can have their cost nullified if a condition is met, such as Pact of Darkness. They better fit the game. Flip cards are also meant to be analogous to land cards themselves, as outside of the new hybrid type cards, they have no use in hand other than to be used as a resource. Why you would go for a Duel Master system where everything can be played as a resource, but also go for a resource card, I don't really understand. It makes flip cards feel more worthless and makes me question if the game did originally use a land type resource system. I honestly would have tacked dual stops onto really basic cards as an attempt to counterbalance effect power and deck resilience. They'd also just remove themselves as the cost when taken as damage, cut the flip card type and make it a mechanic. To be really frank, a lot of things in Bakugan scream they are poorly understood by the designers. Both ramp and recovery, as two examples, the latter of which Kohdok mentioned, are both dramatically overcosted and too circumstantial with few exceptions. It felt like throughout the entire video, the Kohdok was really having to hold back from saying Bakugan is a poorly made game. I get the feeling it might have actually been the point of the video. For anyone thinking I'm being too critical of Bakugan, it's more that I am of the opinion that the toys are the main draw of the game, and in many ways draw attention away from the TCG's flaws. The game only really serves the purpose of giving the toys more depth. It's fun, but very unpolished. It could be a lot better. So let's move on to the loss of access to cards. The Vanguard community discussed this at great lengths back in the day, since damage systems like Vanguard, Final Fantasy, and the Naruto CCG that they are both derivative of act in a very similar way to life decks. Cards are removed from your deck. The fact of the matter is both drawing the card and discarding the card as damage are chance reliant. Just because you have a card in your deck, even at playset, doesn't mean you're going to draw it. Yes, it sucks to discard something you need, but even if you didn't discard it, drawing that card specifically would require assistance. Chance to draw it naturally is very low. As an example, in a Magic deck, chance to draw a card that you have a playset of in your opening hand is just short of 40%, and each turn you have about a 6.6% chance to draw it. Life decks don't deny you from playing your cards because you are never destined to draw them anyway. It's all chance. Saying that, a well-designed life deck game will have discard pile interaction and handcrafting effects to counterbalance having more important cards discarded as damage. Bakugan doesn't do this. If anything, it seems averse to this thought pattern. It really should have more discard interaction. Kohdok even says life games should. I can't think of one that isn't Bakugan that doesn't have meaningful discard interaction. I've spent a while talking about Bakugan. Let's move on to the Harry Potter example he gave of massive damage being an issue. I don't know much about the Harry Potter TCG. I don't like the franchise. All I know about the TCG is that it's built off WCW Nitro, but I looked into it. It's an oddity. Creatures do damage to your opponent at the start of your turn after you draw. There doesn't seem to be any dedicated damage stop card. No damage trigger effects. Creatures can only attack players, and the only way to deal with them seems to be kill the creature. Maybe it works out, but the game is said to be mind-numbingly simple, which is par the course for Wizards of the Coast's non-magic games, and couldn't survive 2 years, despite being Harry Potter. Harry Potter and Bakugan are both very poor examples of games using life decks in my opinion. Both have very questionable design choices. The damage issue is a problem in most life deck games. It's a result of either poor game design, power creep, or actually part of the game. Many balance it out with a mechanic related to taking damage that stops it. Even WCW has its Thunder cards, which operate exactly like reversals in WWE Raw Deal and are oddly missing from Harry Potter. But you know what else I see? Life deck games going too far in the opposite direction. Stasis decks becoming an issue. The games just don't have that dynamic movement because the devs prioritize stabilization to such a degree that aggro, what most players want, is unviable. The games become boring and the devs feel the need to power creep out of it. The part of Kohdok's video that really left me to pause and think was his argument that life decks were made redundant by shields. I thought about it a lot and came to the conclusion that his only real argument was that shields going to the hand feels good. Which it does. Furthermore, he is betrayed by his very example. Bakugan has shield trigger type flips. Not all flips in Bakugan prevent damage. Some are effects. They aren't used because of the cost system and scope of the game. Fun argument is really painted by the games he uses as examples. It does feel good when you hang in there and fight back. Seeing a reversal or endurance feels great, especially the more dire the situation. Just like having your Holy Ore or Heal trigger set off. From the attacking position, these type of effects elicit the same groan as a shield trigger or damage trigger. I don't get what he's going for. In practice, it's the exact same, except for that +1 in Duel Masters. If anything, the life decks have more chances for these effects to be set off. This flows into his example from Mark Rosewater, which I feel was wrongly used. In its original context, people want to use the cards they're discarding. I immediately thought of cards that have trigger effects when discarded. Magic has those. Madness. This issue back in Odyssey seems like what sparked the idea of Madness. It doesn't gel with Threshold, but that's not the point. That's the type of mechanic you'd want if you're discarding cards. In the context of Kohdok's video, damage trigger effects serve this exact purpose. I'm at a loss to his actual point here. Even the main game he talks about, Bakugan, does this. I've already stated this. On Kohdok's first video in this series, the one about early rotation, I left a comment saying that extended format players don't buy cards or boosters. They buy decks and that's it. The only time Wizards makes money off extended formats is when they're attracting new players to them via reprints. If Magic was extended, it'd end up like Yu-Gi-Oh! It'd necessitate power creep. This, I feel, is inarguable. His reply? Print fetch lanes again. It'll get people to buy. He even said this in his next video, alluding to my comment. No thought about what it would do to Standard. No thought that it's doing exactly what I said prior. Just getting new players into Modern, not getting Modern players to buy Standard. No thought of what the high power levels of Standard currently are doing to Magic, and have been doing to Magic for a few years now because Wizards is trying to get modern players to buy Standard product. No thought at all. No understanding of his own statements or the scenarios he's talking about. The fact of the matter is, Kohdok is right in his observation that rotation can kill games. Naruto and arguably Kaijudo died to it. Japanese Pokemon took such a hard blow that it took over a decade to recover. There were more factors than this, however. Other games blowing up at the time and how the rotation was handled. But he doesn't talk about this. I doubt he's done the research. Life decks, like anything in this medium, are a tool of the game designer. It's good or bad depending on how it's used and what surrounds it. It's not good or bad in and of itself. Let's take lands as an example. Lands cop a lot of crap in the TCG community. Most people, even Magic players, do not like them. But it's not the concept of resources that are flawed. It's the nature of them being in the deck that annoys people. Different games have tackled this issue in different ways to varying success. They also face their own share of problems because of their own systems. Nothing is perfect. I may end up talking about his unmixable attribute video when he uploads it, mostly because of his palpable hatred for Vanguard, it being very likely that this video will focus on Vanguard and my upcoming mini-series talking about, you guessed it, Vanguard. Kohdok, if you're watching this for any reason, I recommend trying WWE Raw Deal. Team Canada has a starter deck PDF of The Rock vs Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's a good place to start. I think playing a good game that uses life decks instead of games like Harry Potter and Bakugan would change your opinions on it a lot. I don't know if you'd like the theming, but that's not the point. It's the gameplay. Life decks don't make games bad. Bad design decisions surrounding them do. This has been Some Gamer Dude, and thanks for watching.